Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name's Alex White. I'm the Project Officer at Carers New South Wales on the Care to Work project. I'm also the co-host of the Carer Advantage webinar series. So this monthly series is a collaboration between Carers New South Wales Care to Work project and the TAFE New South Wales Carer to Career program. And it's focused on supporting carers with their education and employment goals. So I'm joined today by Tracy Ellum, who's the newly instated project coordinator of the Carer to Career program at TAFE New South Wales. And we'll be kicking off the series for the new year today with the topic Keeping Informed. So before I start the session, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land where I stand today. So on the Gadigal, with the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and to extend my respects to the traditional custodians across the many different locations where we meet in this virtual space this morning. So, today's session, firstly, as I said, the topic is keeping informed. I'll start the session today with a brief overview and update of relevant services and supports for carers. And I'll be followed by Tracy, who is going to give you an update from TAFE New South Wales programs and supports. And we'll then be joined around 10:30, 10:40 by Sarah Judd-Lamb, our guest speaker today. So Sarah is the Manager of Policy and Research at Carers New South Wales, and she'll be providing an analysis of the 2020 National Carer Survey results with a focus on carers balancing paid work and care. So to begin, I just wanted to take the opportunity this morning to run over the range of functions that Carers New South Wales provides carers as the peak body for carers in the state. So we provide a range of services and supports across information referral, education and training, as well as systemic advocacy for carer, inclusive policy making, research and service delivery. So to access updated the current updates, for those of you who aren't already aware, Carers New South Wales has a bi-monthly printed newsletter available for members, in addition to monthly e-newsletters that come through to your email that provide information and updates on key services and supports for carers. So I've just got the link to the website here of how to register and to get those the carers news. So there's a series of new fact sheets available on knowing your rights as a carer, which has been developed by the Carer Rights and Complaints Network, a joint initiative of Carers New South Wales and the Department of Communities and Justice. So you can access, there's eight fact sheets that are available, PDFs for download. So one is knowing your rights at work. Another on how to manage financial hardship. So Carers New South Wales website also has a lot of information on these issues and how to go about making complaints and these around these issues. So I've got the link to the website here. So we also have free education sessions, workshops, online chat forums, a range of online and information and education modules, and digital resources on a range of topics. And these are regularly updated. So there's an education and training calendar available. I've just got the link to the website here, and as well as a specific website that has been created for online carer support, the Carer Peer Connect website. So I've just got that here. So the Carers New South Wales policy team also welcomes any kind of feedback, advice, suggestions from carers at any time about problems you may have with systems, services and policies, really any issues. They can talk to you and guide you around the best approach to tackle these issues. So you can either complete an online policy advice form if you're quite clear on what the issue is, or you can just get in touch via email or phone with someone from the policy team, and yeah, and they will log your issue or complaint. And obviously this really assists and informs Carers New South Wales systemic advocacy, and we rely on your feedback. So please have a look at the website again. Okay, I'm hoping that all of you are now aware of the Carer Gateway as the new national service system for carers. So the Carer Gateway replaced the Carer Line and the Commonwealth CareLink respite centres in April last year. So it provides a single entry point for carer services. Obviously, there are some other carer services out there, of course, in each state, and there are some differences, but it's really aiming to streamline support for carers, much like My Aged Care and the National Disability Insurance Scheme. And the Carer Gateway provides a range of online and in-person tailored support for carers. So please have a look at the website. There are 16 service areas across Australia. This is obviously for the Carer Gateway, and there's 4 service areas in New South Wales, of which Carers New South Wales manages one region. So it's obviously based on geographical location, who will be, but it's using the one 1-800 number and the one point of entry. So in addition to online information and support on the website, there are a range of in-person supports under these six areas. So they include carer support planning, peer support, counselling, emergency respite care, carer-directed support, and in-person carer coaching, which should commence, I think, mid this year. So, except in circumstances of an emergency, all carers must go through the intake, registration, holistic needs assessment, and the support planning process to access any of these services.
It's just too hard.
Sorry. So I just thought I'd run over the carer-directed support as probably something that's a newer and more relevant support option for many of you. So included in the Carer Gateway services are opportunities for financial assistance to support carers with education and employment goals. So eligibility to access this one-off funding and to support your individual goals is determined by the carer service provider, which is assigned to you in your geographical region, and it's determined by the intake and assessment process. So as you can see, carers are entitled to access one, not both, of the carer-directed support options. And you can't request access or entitlement to this funding, of course. It's rather you need to go through the assessment process and provide the information, relevant information regarding your situation that'll then deem you eligible or not. So the one-off packages are limited as well, and the priority of access is based on need. And it's in line with guidelines as interpreted by the carer service provider. So you know, there are some different interpretations going on at the moment, and this is really where we just ask you to as carers to start to engage in the process and provide feedback as you can. So I've really heard some amazing success stories of carers being able to utilise this funding and to advance their employment goals, you know, as in the last 6 months. So I'm really excited about this option for carers. So I just will move now to simply how to access the Carer Gateway, the website and the 1-800 number, and I just encourage you all to register on the platform. And to utilise the other carer services I've mentioned today, So I guess Carers New South Wales systemic advocacy, as well as the funding bodies, are really rely on your feedback in order to continue to provide effective and quality and relevant support for carers. So particularly if you've had experienced any issues or have outstanding needs that are not being addressed by the current service system, please get in touch with the policy team to work on these. It's a very new system, and we're at the start of getting it right. So and of course quality improvement is based on is only happen with the active engagement from carers and the feedback and evaluation process that is required. So that is all for me today. I'll just like to hand over now to Tracy, and she'll take you through some updates with TAFE New South Wales. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. I'm just changing permissions there. Beautiful. Thanks so much, Alex, for your warm welcome, and welcome to those who are here today. I'm Tracy, and yes, I'm the new coordinator for the Carer to Career project at TAFE New South Wales, which is a funded project. It's funded till about July this year, and will be evaluated as if it will continue or not, but we'll have to wait and see what happens there. A little bit of an update, I guess, just quickly on some things that are happening there. Hopefully anyone that comes to the webinar or has registered in the past will get some information from me around some of the new things that are happening in regards to courses that you might be interested in that are tailor-made for carers. So there's one that's been approved and is already tabled to be issued, I think, to start in February, which is called Plan Management. So if you haven't got that information yet, hopefully it will be arriving very shortly for you to have a think about. The other one that I know was just approved just before holiday and hasn't been fully published yet, I can tell you that there is a peer support type program that's been made as well, and I'll actually be teaching that unit with the carer flavour, which will be excellent. So more information to come on that shortly once TAFE reopens back up in the next week or so. Now with my little presentation, I'll just share my screen. Today I thought I'd just give you a little bit of a quick update on, I guess, some of the new funding that TAFE's sort of spruiking, I guess, for everyone out there because of COVID, but also applicable to carers. So bear with me 1 second and I'll just share the screen. All right, so as I said, we're the Carer to Career project. You can find the information about that project on the TAFE website. If you even just Google Carer to Career, we come up pretty quickly. There is a registration form on that website so that you can access information from us. The general process is at the moment is they will come through obviously to me, and I will be in contact in some way. At the moment, while we're slowly getting back in, it's often an email to get a bit more information about you. And then as time will go on, I'll be, making phone calls as well, which will be really good to get to know the needs and I guess those desires of carers out there, and maybe things that we could be developing. Okay, so the second slide's just got some links in there for you. So the first one that I guess everyone's sort of starting to talk about is something called the job trainer. Maybe I have to do it over here. There we go. I had to do it on a different part of the screen. Thank you. All right, yes. So now I'm hoping I can click into that link for us, and it will take us actually through to the TAFE website. So some of you may have already been to the TAFE's website. There's a lot of information there, and appreciate that. So one thing that I'm hoping to do, and I have started to develop, is something called a Carer Information Hub, and I'm using a product called Microsoft Sway to put that together, and it's like a dynamic web-based platform where I can put all the relevant links for you, so you don't have to go hunting down every single thing. You've heard me say it, and hopefully it will be replicated in that document. So you can see here on this job trainer, it's talking about that it's hoping to provide school leavers and job seekers with fee-free and low-cost courses to obviously upskill and develop new skills. And they're obviously targeting areas that are obviously growth areas or places where they feel they don't have enough people in the market to keep the economy going. So you can check you're not seeing the link on your side. I wonder if I have to go back here and click here again. Wonder if it will let me do that. No, doesn't look like it does let me go there, does it? Maybe that's a limitation. But are you happy for me just to keep talking about it, and I'll make sure you guys get this link anyway? What we do after the presentation, we always send you some resources to take away as well, okay, including the recording that we've done. So you've got something to go back to and go, oh, yep, that's what they were saying, and put it all together. So with this particular module, I'll just go back to that other screen so I can see what I'm talking about. There is a check your eligibility button there that you go into, and it will ask you some key questions about your situation. And what they do say, though, at any time when you're going through there, is that it's not an automatic enrolment from there. Basically, it has to sort of go through the cogs at TAFE from there to say, yes, you are definitely eligible and those sorts of things for the different assistance. So when going in there, it will just give you, I guess, an indication if you would be eligible or not, depending on your situation. So there is a question about if you are a carer or not in there. The other ones that we've got on that list, and I won't go too long because I know Sarah will be with us shortly, there are other fee help options that TAFE are offering, and I'll again put that into that little document that we send you after this presentation so you can peruse that at your own time, because as you say, it's sort of for an individual basis there. There's other options too to think around, I guess, if you are going to be doing a course that is a paid course, or maybe even if it's just a reduced cost course. TAFE are very good at organising payment plans. I do understand that everyone's not going to have the money up front. So I do encourage you to have that conversation with whoever's doing your intake or enrolment at the time. And usually, you know, they're quite accommodating. I even remember when I went through TAFE, it's been a little while since I've done my big courses there, but when I did, I actually did a payment plan because I'd just started working, and it was really helpful to have that extra bit of cash flow as a young student back then. So I'd imagine that may be helpful for some of you. Is there anyone got any questions or anything around anything either Alex so far or myself have said? I've been quite brief just because I know we've got time restraints, but is there any questions that anyone's got so far for us?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, so I think I'd definitely encourage you to definitely have a little look at the links in and around the funding because, yeah, there's lots of different options, I guess a lot more than maybe usual, being that we've had the pandemic. The other thing to think about with the Carer to Career program was something you mentioned just before we started, Corinna, around that recognition of carers and the skills that you bring to the table. So remembering that there is a process of recognition of prior learning through TAFE, and we can help support that. So usually part of my role would be also to have a sit down conversation with you and go, okay, well, can you give me some evidence around that particular skills? And it might be that, you know, you're able to show me that you've been liaising with a speech therapist or another allied health professional in your caring capacity, and that might show me that you've got particular skills, you know, that are connected in with something else that we could offer you. Just trying to think of some other good examples there. You might have done some casual admin work somewhere, or you might have dabbled in running your own business, or, you know, there's lots of different things that we can pull together, and definitely there's huge market out there. I think there's a lot of appetite for people who've got that lived experience as carers, you know, and definitely that was one thing, I guess, that attracted TAFE to take me on. Not only that I have a teaching and an education background and have peer support as my key quals and things, but also the fact that I am a carer myself and have had that lived experience. So I am a mum of someone with autism, and he's 16 years old, and you know, we definitely have our challenges up and down, and yes, we sort of you know, I think during the time when I wasn't fully working because I had to be caring for him, there was lots of things I was learning along the way from other professionals we would often liaise in with. So yeah, please remember that there's always that option too to discuss that. You may have done other courses as well that, you know, maybe in the back of the resume that you haven't thought about for a while that might be still quite current and be worthy to sort of add in as well. And then we can sort of also then discuss things about, you know, maybe what other options you've got. So a bit of career advice, I guess, or where the gaps might be, so that we can sort of help you. Yeah. Does that sound?
A bit of my question is, so like obviously there's an intake process, but so, you know, like would you be assigned, a caseworker is not the word, a career advisor, so you would be part of that process?
Yeah, exactly. So basically what the career project is that some of my time through the week is allocated to doing that process. If we know we get a large intake, there's capacity for us to maybe look at having extra staff on. At the moment, it's predominantly me. I was job sharing with Michelle in that interim period, and that was really good having a couple of heads across it. So again, it just depends, yeah, on how much intake flow we have. And my hours are around 14 and a half funded through the week, and that's sort of splattered across the full week, being that we're doing a lot of work remotely and at home and those sorts of things now, not having to necessarily go into the office all the time. You know, as you can imagine, we're sort of multi-faceted and working across many different things at one time. But yeah, definitely that's the sort of thing I'm keen to help people with.
Thanks, Tracy. That was really nice. And I think for me, the reminder with the recognition of prior learning is that you can pull in other things that you've done. So I guess I've been letting carers know that, you know, they've got around the caring role, but I was kind of forgetting that, you know, it's always that combination, you know, because everyone when I'm talking with carers, they've usually got a lot of life experience in a range of areas, and I think that's something I was forgetting around all the pieces that come together for recognition of prior learning. I think it's just a fantastic process. Yep. So yeah, look, obviously we cross refer a lot, and I just wanted to also say for Corinne, the Care to Work project is also can provide some career counselling. So if it is that there's that other resource available via our program, and the intake process isn't too arduous. So if you wanted to get in touch with I can provide some individual support and just depending on your needs and your situation.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. I appreciate that, because I guess every situation is individual. So yeah. Thank you.
Everyone's really appreciative of individual support. I think it's pretty necessary. All right, we should pass on to Sarah, I think.
Hi everyone, and sorry I wasn't able to join you earlier. I just had a meeting clash, but it's a great privilege to be with you. I've been watching these sort of webinars being promoted last year with interest. Haven't been able to make any of them yet, but I think it's a great initiative, and been working closely with Alex and Tracy now, as well as Michelle Meacham before, around I guess the evidence side and the policy and advocacy side to support these programs, which are really exciting. So basically I just had a discussion last year with Michelle around maybe people being interested in some of the data that we'd gotten from the National Carer Survey about carers that are working. And we always, the language is always tricky around carers that are working, and we sort of toss up different ways of saying it because we don't want to invalidate the work of care, whether it be unpaid and informal or not. But we obviously want to make a distinction between paid employment and care. And so, I mean, open to your thoughts as well as we go through the presentation about wording, but where we've landed with our current sort of facts and figures around balancing work and care, we've sort of said balancing care with paid employment, try and make it clear that what we're talking about, and I guess, validate both things, even though they're different, obviously. So I'm the Manager of Policy and Research at Carers New South Wales. I work with Alex, and my team does a lot of systemic advocacy around carers' needs in regards to policy. We also do a lot of grant applications. So we actually wrote the grant application for Care to Work. So we're very familiar with the project. And we also do quite a lot of research, and employment is a real area of interest for us from a service delivery perspective, but also just wanting to understand better what carers want with regard to employment and how to support them into employment or into more sustainable employment. And we work with a number of academics as well that are really interested in that. So there's a lot going on. But we did this survey last year that kind of just has a few little highlights. So I will try and stay relatively brief and allow some time for questions. And I know not everyone loves kind of graphs and stuff. So I just threw together a few things that we've published, but I'll just talk through, I guess, what some of the interesting findings are from those. And I think the resolution's a little low on these slides, so apologies for that. But I will make sure that Tracy and Alex send you the links to the actual documents that you can, they're all screenshots from those documents so that you can look at them in whole. So let's see. So the 2020 National Carer Survey, Carers New South Wales does a biennial survey, so every 2 years. Previously, that was a statewide survey of approximately 2,000 carers in New South Wales. And last year, for the first time, we went national with it, which was a huge effort, and coordinated with all the state and territory carers associations to make sure we got carers from across Australia. So we got, I think on the whole, over 8,000 carers responded, but in terms of bringing that down to a sample of carers that we could really look at in depth, around 7,000. And a large proportion of those were employed in paid employment. So it's a survey, if anyone's familiar with it, that's quite in depth, and it's not. So there's population level data that the Australian Bureau of Statistics collects, which is more representative of sort of the whole caring experience nationally. Our survey doesn't try to do that, but what it does try to do is really understand in more depth carers' experiences and specifically where the current challenges are and the current needs are for support. So you'll see there on the third dot point of that slide, fourth dot point, experiences of paid work is always a section, and we developed that in great depth. And as I mentioned before, work with some academics that are specialists in that to try and really get some useful data that can be used to build an evidence base for improved support in the workplace and also policy around care inclusive employment. Survey goes out in online and hard copy. Some of you may have completed it. Actually, did anyone complete it out of interest? I can't see you. But... Okay. I've got my slides up, so I can't see anybody else, but some of you may have completed it. If you didn't, look out for it next year.
Yeah, this is Corinne. I didn't because of, we get a lot of paperwork as it is already, and you look at some things and go, yeah, I'd really like to contribute to that, but I just really don't have the capacity to do it. Yeah. So that would be the reason I didn't do it. Yeah.
Completely understand. And I mean, we know it's not for everyone. We got plenty of people complete it, and it's not the only way we collect that information. So we understand it's a long survey. It is very hard to shorten it, and that's completely fine. So that's kind of the survey. I guess before I move on to the findings, because what I was going to focus on today was just specifically the people that responded who were in paid work. Did anyone else have any questions or comments about the survey process itself?
No.
Okay, great. And we'll send the links to where the report, there's a report and there's some fact sheets coming out, one of which is specifically on carers balancing care and paid employment, which is what I'm looking at here. And we kind of have done the high level analysis. We'll be doing some more in-depth analysis. So if you've got specific questions you want to know, you're very welcome to contact me. I've got my email at the end of this presentation, and we can have a dig and see what we have on that information. But really my aim today is just to say, what did we find from the survey about those carers that were in paid employment? So people that were currently carers, out of the full sample that were balancing paid work with caring, there was nearly 2,000. So that's pretty good size sample nationally, although obviously it's not everybody. And so a lot of our carers that responded, I think the majority are sort of on a pension payment, more likely carer payment, and not in paid employment. So we kind of, I guess, got some responses around barriers to employment from those that aren't employed, but we also got responses around the employment experience of those that are employed. And a number of these questions we've asked over a number of years. So we've got some form of kind of, I guess, comparison, although this is the first time we've had the national data. So if you have a look on, this is from our fact sheet on carers in paid employment. If you have a look over the left side of that slide, you'll see that most of the carers in paid employment are primary carers. Most care for one person, most are female, and interestingly, most of the primary carers, though, that responded to the survey overall were not working. So it's just a bit of an interesting balance with those that are working and those that are not working. The average hours of caring per week. So we're interested in looking at how many hours carers in paid employment were spending caring and how many hours they were spending working in paid employment. So 55 hours of caring per week was the average number of caring hours, and paid work 28 hours per week. So you can see a lot of part-time workers and caring taking more time than paid work, which is probably not a surprise. And most or average time caring was 11 years, so quite long-term caring roles. We did a couple of comparisons as well on this fact sheet around comparing carers that are in the workforce compared to not in the workforce. So if you look at average age there, you can see that the carers in the workforce are younger than the ones that were not in the workforce. That's largely because a lot of the ones that aren't in the workforce were retirement age. Who they care for. So carers that were in paid employment were predominantly caring for their child. And in this context, when we say child, that includes an adult son or daughter. And then after that, a parent, and then after that, a partner. And that's interesting because I think a lot of the attention of policy is on people in what they would call elder care. So, you know, as your career progresses, perhaps taking more and more time out of the workforce to care for a parent. But the kind of group we tend to capture more with our survey are more sort of the long-term, high-intensity, lifelong caring roles where primary carers are caring for a child long-term. So that's, I think, why we got such a big amount of people that are in that position. And again, as I said before, it may not be representative of the population. It's just representative of who responded to our survey, just to kind of keep that in mind as we look at the other results. Any questions on that slide?
No. It makes sense. And I think, you know, there's a lot of talk about the sandwich generation of carers, where you spend a lot of your life caring for a child or an adult child with a range of issues, and then you get to a certain age and then you begin to care for your parents as well. It's just a natural progression of age. I can just see that is really, to me, that who they care for circle graph is it makes a lot of sense.
And that's actually something that we haven't looked at yet in the data, although we have in previous surveys. We haven't kind of zeroed in on the group that are caring for a child and a parent, both in terms of whether that is a child with specific care needs, like a child with disability, but also we did capture this year a new question which was on household composition. So we actually have data for the first time this year on how many other people are in the household and whether they're adults or children. So we should be able to get a good picture on where, you know, genuinely sandwich carers. So you may have a child that doesn't need special care, but you then have a parent as well. So that's, I'll note that down for our next. We've got a list as long as my arm of things to look at. But
also see that those parents may or may not be living in your household.
Yes, that's true, and we do capture that as well.
Yeah. So I just thought I'd throw that in.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I guess just again thinking live, we'll need to make sure we include. We've got a question on whether you're caring for someone. We can look at who's caring for a parent, whether they're living with them or not, and then we can look at that carer's household. So we should be able to. We can construct kind of a bit of a data set of people that meet all those criteria, and that's a good point.
I think the NDIS would call that an informal support.
Possibly, yeah.
For the parent care.
Yeah.
Parent care where your parents used to be an informal support, but now you are informally supporting them. Yeah, there's just sort of like an overlap there. A sandwich.
Definitely.
Yeah, and definitely we should look at the sandwich group, because I think it's really a very common situation and there's a lot of interesting things there. So thank you for that tip. We will go into that. We haven't yet.
This is just it's relevant for me, but yeah, and I know a lot of other people that are in the same situation in my age group.
Very common.
Yeah.
Very common. We can see that from the population level data, but I think the benefit of this survey is we go into so many in-depth questions around service experience and things that the population data doesn't have, and it will be really interesting to compare that group to other groups and see where their particular challenges are. Moving on to the next slide. So just again, apologies for the resolution of my screenshots here, but they are on the fact sheet. Just to give you an idea of those carers that were employed, what kinds of employment status they were in. So the majority were in a permanent position, which is great. That's becoming a rarer and rarer opportunity these days. We had then quite a lot of casuals, some fixed term contracts and some self-employed. The other really interesting finding, when our national report came out in October, a friend of mine that works in the sector read the employment section, which was pretty high level, and said, this all looks like bad news about carers that are working. What about, like, is there any evidence of carers that are balancing work actually that benefiting their caring role and benefiting their job? And I was like, we do have that data, we just haven't published it yet. So kind of the like initial bit of that is on the right of that slide, which is that we had a couple of scales in there which are a little complex to analyse, and one of our academic partners is looking at that. But they look at kind of the care and work interference. So they look at the positive and negative elements or effects of caring on work and vice versa. And so just as a really interesting high-level finding, probably not surprising to you, the majority of carers that were employed said that their caring skills made them a better employee. However, also quite a large proportion did say that the caring role made them less prepared for the demands of work. So there's a few other things that we look at like that, and they're really helpful in really understanding that balance, and I guess where the assistance can come in with that. But I think it's a great news story to say carers think their caring skills set them up well for work, and that's obviously supporting care to work and upskilling carers as well.
Absolutely, that's good.
Any questions about that slide before I move on to the next one?
No, I'm good with that.
So, oops, a little bit slow here. The other really interesting area that we want to know about more is the impact of work on people's isolation and well-being, because we know anecdotally carers tell us all the time, like, being able to go to work is a kind of respite for me. It's really important for me to have my own thing, to be able to get out of the house, have a different role. So we hear that a lot anecdotally, and we wanted to compare and see if the data indicates that. So we compared carers in the workforce compared to those not in the workforce. And what's really helpful about this is it gives us solid evidence that as a sort of to back up the arguments that it's in the government's interest to support carers to participate in work. So as you can see there on the top, the level of social isolation among carers in the workforce is quite a lot lower than carers not in the workforce, which is probably not surprising to those of you that are working. Psychological distress is also a lot lower for carers in the workforce compared to those not in the workforce. So they had really good kind of data points that you can, refer to if you want to make the case that work is important for carer wellbeing. Any thoughts or questions about that?
Yeah, look, it all makes sense. Sometimes you want to go to work for a break, like just go and be your own person, do your own thing as a person. But then, I guess then there's those barriers in the workforce where, you get a phone call and you've got to drop everything and go back into your carer role. So, yeah, no, but I can see, well, it's sort of like, I guess, essentially a lot of it, I think, comes down to respite as well. Like work can be respite, but you need respite to be able to work. Or study too.
That's right. You don't want to get rid of that either, do you? No.
No, and that's a whole other presentation. Because
this program is so good, like through TAFE and in Carers New South Wales. Like how it's a really good mesh. Yeah.
Well, we definitely one thing that we've really pushed with previous survey data and have strategically looked at evidence for this part is we have previously felt that there's a big gap in sort of public discourse around carers and work, in that people talk a lot about carer-friendly workplaces, which is great, and they talk a lot about job readiness programs, which is great, and that's kind of what the majority of supports that are out there for carers are. But we hadn't really seen anyone acknowledge, and we still really haven't, that the third critical component is freeing up your time so you can work. And so we've done a few sort of articles and conference papers with some of our academic partners around that, basically trying to argue for a third part of the picture, which is that if you don't have adequate formal services in place at the right time that suits the carer, that enables them to work without last minute changes, then the other two things won't work, basically. So we captured a lot of information about respite and time out to work and things like that in the survey, some of which is in the national report. I haven't reported on it here, but it's definitely an area that's a big focus for us. And while I mentioned before that carers often would say to us that work is a form of respite, we absolutely don't view it as a form of respite in any formal way, because we feel that that's a service.
That's just wrong. Like that, work shouldn't be respite. Like
No.
But that, that's how it can be for some carers.
Yep. So that's definitely sort of carer language there. But we would definitely see it as a separate and equally valuable thing. But respite as a service type is a big advocacy priority of ours. If I go on to the next slide, again another blurry one. So we asked a lot of questions of the carers that were employed about their work situation. We also asked all of the respondents about their experiences of career trajectory, basically. So this graph is not just those that are employed, but everybody that answered this question, and most people did answer this question. And so what we asked is a whole range of things as to whether they'd experienced those as a result of their caring role. And so you can see there at the top that it's pretty common for people to have quit the workforce, quit a job to be able to care, and basically about the same to have reduced working hours. And so those two, are very common. I think having that evidence helps us say, well, what can we do, and how can we implement flexible working arrangements so that people don't have to quit or reduce their hours? Because that's quite a specific action that can maybe be prevented if it's worthwhile for people to stay in work for their own financial well-being, emotional well-being, as we looked at earlier. You can also see skills and qualifications coming out of date, which I know is a key sort of focus and concern of these two programs. People feeling less prepared, less confident about working. Quite a lot of people retired, but retired early, which means that sometimes that data is hidden because they're retired, but actually they retired to care. So it's important to capture that. And then you see people having accepted jobs lower than their skill set, turning down promotions, changing industry, etc. So it's always an interesting thing to have a look at, because that really looks at the sort of lifelong career impacts of caring for people, whether they're employed or not.
Okay. Sarah, I've got a question for you, just a quick one. Would like to see what the percentage of carers in paid caring role or government, NDIS aged care. Trying to decode that a little.
So I'm just thinking, I don't think that we asked that question specifically in this survey, but we did ask in 2018. The reason we asked in 2018 was, I think there's an assumption that has been part of the formation of these programs as well. Government seems to think that getting carers into work is a natural solution for filling the gap in the paid care workforce, which it is, but our argument has always been not all carers want to be in paid caring roles. So basically we wanted to get some data in 2018 to show that while a lot of carers may want to upskill to go into the caring professions, not all of them do, and not to kind of tar them all with the same brush, essentially. So we do have that from 2018, but I don't think we asked that specific question. We didn't go into occupation and stuff this year, but I can definitely find that data from 2018 for you. And it was an interesting result. It pretty much reflected what we knew anecdotally, which was a lot of carers do want it, but most carers don't. So,
yeah, interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Another graph here for you, use of flexible working. So we always want to track you know, the availability of certain things to carers. Some things are, as you would be aware, probably sort of rights, employment rights, such as carers leave, annual leave, things like that. But obviously there's also a range of flexible working arrangements that can be kind of worked out with employers on a discretionary basis, and just capturing, I guess, what carers workplaces are doing in terms of accommodating their caring role. So this is pretty similar each time we do the survey, but as you can see, flexible start and finish times is pretty common. Using personal leave and annual leave for caring responsibilities is common. Working from home is relatively common, and then other types. And we added in some categories this year because we wanted to know about people that had employers that were granting additional unpaid carers leave, because we know that there's some practices happening there. And we are looking at the current, we've sort of been tossing up whether to do some advocacy around the current National Employment Standards rights entitlements around paid carers leave, because it's in there, paid and unpaid carers leave are in there as rights, but they're a little bit limited and the number of days are limited. And as we know, carers leave, paid carers leave actually comes out of the same bucket as your sick leave, which is not great when, you know, you may need that leave.
You're not actually sick.
Yeah, and it just takes away from, I mean, we know, our argument would be that we know that carers are more likely to have their own illnesses and disabilities from the caring role. So to make people that are more likely to need sick leave also have to use that leave for carers leave is actually very, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And the same goes for holiday pays, like other families I've, know about that, you get so many weeks holidays per year, but they don't actually get a holiday because they've taken this day off here, that day off there. It all adds up, and then so they don't actually get an annual holiday because of their carer role. That's exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
So we want to try and demonstrate that, carers are using their holiday leave and their sick leave to care, and they, more than anyone else, actually need their holidays and their sick leave. Yeah. So therefore, carers leave should be separate. So I don't know how likely that is to change anytime soon, but I guess we've been moving towards that kind of a recommendation. There's a few other organisations that are looking at that, just trying to expand the carers leave entitlements. So all the questions we put in the survey, I mean, we want to do good research, but we also want to have data that supports systemic advocacy. And then I think this might be my last slide of data anyway. So we also asked about people getting a job and what barriers that experience getting a job. And this was a new question that we added this time. And so the colours are probably not great there because they're switched around. Red I would usually put with disagree, so just bear with the colour problem there. But the red in this case is strongly agree or agree, and the blue is disagree or strongly disagree. So looking at the red, you can see that the highest agreement there is people saying that the demands on their time would have been too high to keep up their caring role if they were to get a job or the job that they were looking at. And another common one was that they wouldn't be able to take enough leave to keep up the caring role. And another one that the type of work that they were looking at would have not enabled them to check in on the person. So you can see there we're kind of trying to get a bit more of an understanding of what those individual barriers are. And they are very individual depending on the job type, the industry, the caring role, and we can kind of look in more depth at that. But just getting some evidence on like what the actual most common things preventing carers from getting a job are. So that's the end of the data, and I was just going to then finish up with kind of a like where to from here, what do we do with this data? But are there any questions on the data?
I just wanted to comment that when it comes to the end, my skills weren't recognised, and you look at the data, well, you're on the right track with the program that you're doing. Yeah. This is why
it goes a long way, to make some difference. I hope,
that really, really stands out. So obviously you're on the right track.
There was just a little reflection from one of the other ladies in the session, just saying that she was actually quite surprised that more carers are not self-employed, as would see this as quite a good fit for and more flexible work environment. I've just commented back saying, yeah, it could be. There's definitely pros and cons. I'm partly self-employed, so I can definitely see both sides of that coin as to why maybe people don't do it. But also, yes, I think it does open some doors for those who are keen.
And maybe we should look at that self-employed group and just see if there's any interesting data about what they do, because I can think of some downsides as well. But yeah, it is rather a small portion. But again, it's not representative of the population. So I think you know, our group that responds is a little bit skewed from the population. So it may not be that that's the case. There might be a higher proportion in general, just in the people that responded to our survey. It was small.
Yeah, true.
So just my last slide really was just to say, what do we do with this data? I've kind of talked about it a little bit anyway, but the purpose of the survey and what we are actively doing with that data now as we analyse it is to look at our services. So obviously we've seen there's some relevant things to, for example, care to work, and to inform new, so innovative projects and grant applications that we might be looking at in this area. It informs our systemic advocacy, so both through sort of workplaces, through our Carers and Employers program, also through policy recommendations, and also just through building an evidence base of the importance of carer-friendly work as a whole. And so we are building that evidence base over time through the survey. And then information and capacity building. So we also do fact sheets and other resources for carers and for employers on employment. And a little plug, which I think Tracy may have already mentioned or will mention, but we've done a series of fact sheets on rights and complaints, and one of them is on work rights and complaints, and that's currently available. There's going to be a webinar on that later in the year, and we're working on a few other resources with a few other organisations in that area of workplace rights, exercising those rights. So yeah, that's kind of all I had. My email's there if you want to follow up with any questions, but yeah, thanks for letting me throw some data at you. And I hope it was interesting.
Yeah, no, thank you, Sarah. That's excellent. This gives us a good understanding of where things are at. No major surprises for me, but I think, as you say, there's that ability to hopefully dig a little bit deeper with some of the aspects that you've talked about, and I guess more to come. And I guess programs like this, as that grows momentum too, then hopefully we know when we come to that next survey, you know, you might get a bigger population of different people, I guess, putting their information in, you know, he's hoping anyway.
And it's definitely, there's never surprises. And I guess like how we always frame it is what the survey does is gives us evidence of what we already know that people will listen to because it's more numerical. So, you know, we know a lot anecdotally, carers know a lot, those of us that work with carers know a lot, and really the survey helps us just go, oh yeah, like our assumptions and our anecdotal knowledge were correct, and here's some solid evidence that governments are more likely to listen to, basically. Very rare surprises.
Excellent.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Yeah, it was a really good presentation, and I think there's a lot of people that unfortunately weren't able to join us today, but as you know, this it gets recorded, and I think this will be really valuable to reflect back on, and also to emphasize that without this sort of engagement you can't improve services for carers. So thanks so much for coming in and presenting today.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. Well, I think we'll say goodbye, hey? Until next time.
Yeah.
Excellent, guys. Have a great week.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much.